That's fine.
All right.
That's fine with me.
All right. Good. Everybody ready?
Sure.
All right. Well, excuse me. Welcome to a Cancer Story podcast where we share stories of survivorship, loss, faith, lifestyle, alternatives, and resources. I'm your host, BK Foster, and after my diagnosis with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, I've come across numerous people that have great stories to tell. One of them is here today, and I'd like to introduce you to Sierra. We call her Sizzle, but it's Haynes, Sierra Haynes. And she's got a really good story to tell. So I'd like to introduce her and let her tell a little bit about herself, and then we'll get into her story. So, Sierra, take it away.
Well, my name is Sierra Haynes, and I've lived here in Cartersville my whole life. I got pregnant with my son when I was 16 and had him when I was 17. He got diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia a month before his 10th birthday.
Wow.
He'd been complaining for a few months of leg pain and tiredness, and I kind of just brushed it off as you're a 9-year-old boy. Your knees are going to hurt, your legs are going to hurt, you're going to be tired. And then he started coming home from school and just falling asleep on the couch and not wanting to play outside. And that probably went on for about 6 months. And he started running fevers at night, which was something that I was like, okay, I need to pay attention to this. And then he passed out at school one day. So when he passed out at school, I took him to the doctor, and they thought that he just had a virus. They were like, this is probably viral. We'll give it another week or two, and then we'll see what's going on. About 3 days later, I just felt like something really was wrong, and I called the doctor, and I said, we need to do blood work. I thought he had mono, and I was like, he's got mono. He has a 6-month-old sibling. We're not going to play this game. He just needs to get the blood work done. So they got the blood work done Friday morning. Friday afternoon, we went to the cardiologist because he had passed out. They wanted us to go to a cardiologist. And the cardiologist did his exam, and then he said, okay, you need to go to... His phone was going off the whole time, which I thought was weird. His cell phone was going off. He kept checking it, kept looking at it. And when he got done, he was like, listen, you need to go across the street to the pediatrician's office. They need to speak to you, and you need to go there right now. So I'll never forget, I looked over at my son, and I'm like, I told you had mono. I'm like, we're going to go over here. Right. I'm like, we're going to go over here, and that's what they're going to tell us. And I remember I opened the door, and it was like 4:55. It was the end of the day. Nobody was there. And every nurse in there stopped and looked at us, and nobody said anything. And I kind of then was like, okay, I know, like, that's not good. I don't know what it is, but like, that's not normal. And the doctor had already left for the day. So she was on the phone, and she was like, they did Harrison's blood work, and he has cancer. They're like, that's all I know. I can't tell you anything else. You need to get in a car, and you need to go to CHOA right now. They're waiting on you. And I was just kind of like, I remember thinking I was going to throw up, and I looked over at my son because the phone was on speaker, and he was just sitting there looking at me, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And
by the way, you have cancer.
Yeah. It was just, she was like, that's really all they've told me. I don't know anything else. I wish I was there. I wish I knew more. I wish I could tell you. She was like, all I know is I've called CHOA. The cancer unit is waiting on you. You have to go right now. And the nurse it's actually an RN was standing there. I mean, not an RN, a nurse practitioner was standing there, and I know her. I've known her since I was in high school, and she was like, do you need me to drive you? What do you need us to do? And I was like, no, like, I got this. We're going to make it. And I just remember getting in the car. I called my husband at the time, and I was like, we have to go to CHOA. They said Harrison has cancer. I don't know anything else. And we just drove down there, and when we got down there, we stayed in the emergency room for a while, and they really wouldn't tell us what was going on. They wouldn't even tell us he had cancer, but we got swept past everybody else. We went in a room. They contained us. They put a mask on him. They started drawing tons of blood and all this. And then finally my ex-husband at the time, or now ex-husband, he went outside and kind of pushed the doctor up against the wall and was like, listen, you're going to tell us what's going on. We're not going to keep playing this we don't know yet type game. And he ended up saying, well, he has leukemia. We don't know what kind, but it's bad, because on his smear, almost his entire blood was cancer cells. There was hardly anything else in there when we looked at it.
What a way to lay it on you, huh?
Yep. And so that's kind of where it started. Our journey started there.
So tense. So where's he at now?
He is 16. He'll be 17 next month, and he is high school. He has a 4.3 GPA. He is captain of the sports medicine team, and he works 30 hours a week, and he is doing very, very well.
So he has an interest in medicine, maybe because of his diagnosis? Or
Yes, I think he was in
even though he
treatment
doesn't
for
disclose?
almost 3.5 years. So you spend a lot of time at the hospital, a lot of time, in that environment. And I think those were kind of his informative years. So instead of outside playing baseball or playing football or, being a part of the science team, he wasn't doing that. He was in the hospital for those 3.5 years. And I think that just kind of pushes you into that direction, even if you didn't necessarily think you were going to be there.
Well, and we've talked before about this, and you kind of gave him some tough love, didn't you?
I did. Yes,
Yeah,
I did
you
not.
want to talk about that a little bit?
I did not unenroll him from school the entire time he was in treatment. They kind of wanted us to do that because he would be spending 3 to 3.5 years in treatment, and he was going to be in and out a lot. He ended up having a stroke during his treatment. He, due to one of the chemotherapies, it's a side effect that you get blood clots, and 70% of his sagittal sinus vein was clogged. And it was another one of those things. It was kind of just, he has headaches and he's throwing up because he's in chemo. And it was really, he had a blood clot and he ended up having a stroke from it. But I never took him out of school, and we were lucky. He went to a private Catholic school. So when he was in the hospital, they would just send his work to the hospital, and there was a teacher on staff for the AFLAC unit, which is the child cancer unit. And she would go to all the kids every day and help them with their schoolwork and teach them and do whatever they needed. And that was kind of my rule. I was like, if you can walk from the couch to the front door, you got to go to school.
Yeah.
And that's just how we did it. And I think it helps because
I feel like as a parent, my daughter just turned 19, and if she was, I don't know where I'd be if I got that cancer diagnosis, like especially if she got mine. I have stage 4 pancreatic cancer, which I'm coming up on my first milestone. I was given 12 to 18 months to live, and by the time this comes out, I will have surpassed my first marker.
Yeah, which is amazing.
And I don't feel like I'm going to die anytime soon. If I do, it's probably from the chemo, not the cancer.
Right, exactly.
But you said sagittal sinus, and I know what that is because my mother, she passed away in 1999, but she had tumors in her sagittal sinus. They weren't cancerous, but the first one was the size of a grapefruit, and the sagittal sinus is between the two halves of the brain. So that's when you talk about anything in the brain, when it passes the blood-brain barrier or whatever, it gets really scary.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But I really felt like if I would have taken him out of school and would have isolated him even more than he already was, I just can't imagine that's going to make you want to get up and live every day. Or because there are some, there are some days that are really hard and some days that aren't. And I felt like, if we just kind of would have, I don't want to say wallowed in it, but if we kind of just would have been like, okay, well, we're just going to help in the house and you're going to just be here, and he wouldn't have done as good. And I think really making him, I told him, I was like, the world doesn't care that you have cancer. Yeah. I said, we care about it. We're upset that you have it, but the rest of the world is going to move on.
I just don't know
we have to keep going with that. And I think it was really my way of coping, of being like, this is the only way I'm going to make it.
I don't know that I could have been that tough. I just want to hug and cuddle and whatever, but I mean, for you to have the wherewithal to force him, instead of have self-pity, because I can imagine, it's tough. I don't care what age you are when you're diagnosed. I think it's so easy to fall into that why me mentality.
Yes, I agree.
And I can't imagine as a 10-year-old, doesn't even really know what cancer is. And none of us really do until we're faced with it. But I mean, as a 10-year-old, and for you to say, oh no, if you can get up, if you can walk from the couch, you're going to school. Yeah. I mean, kudos to you.
Thank you. I really just, like I said, I think at the end of the day, it was really my way of coping with it, that if our life continued as much as normal, then things would be okay. And we kind of had a 5-minute rule. If you can do this for 5 minutes, we got to just worry about the next 5 minutes. And then after that 5 minutes, we'll worry about the next 5 minutes. And
I'll put myself in his shoes. I mean, why not fake it? I can do it for 4 minutes.
Exactly.
I just don't want to go to school today. You know?
Yeah. I mean, I can't tell you how many days he was throwing up in the bathroom sink before he went to school. And I was like, all right, come on, we got to get it together. We got to go. You know, like, I know you don't feel good, but we got to make it through this day. And
so is he NED? Is he in remission?
He is in remission. They will never call it, you know, cured.
Right.
But they will say that he is constantly in remission. And that age bracket that he got diagnosed at, there's kind of, I know this sounds crazy, but there's kind of a sweet spot for childhood cancer with blood cancers.
A sweet spot.
If you get it within a certain age, you're less likely to have relapses. You're less, for whatever reason. And he was right at the cusp of that. So it is something where he goes back to CHOA regularly and gets blood work done. And he actually got a shunt from his brain injury, so he has a VP shunt, and he has to get that checked regularly as well.
And that's for
Ever.
lifetime?
Yeah,
forever?
He'll have that
Is
shunt forever.
Yearly, 6 months?
So blood work is 6 months, and then the shunt is once a year.
So as a parent, as something that could help with a child that is in that same situation with leukemia, you noticed the signs, like you said, you thought they were mono.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
What would you do differently as somebody, as just advice to somebody with a child that might have leukemia?
I definitely would have taken him to the doctor sooner. They estimated he probably had it for 6 months to a year before we even did anything. And I realized I am one of those tough love kind of parents, like, all right, you know, come on, keep going, you know. And that kind of was to my detriment in the beginning, because I should have, when I noticed the fevers, that is the biggest thing, because once you get cancer, fevers, they're always like, hey, if you have a fever, come in. If it's been, you know, our rule was if it was 100.3 for an hour, you went in. If it was 101, you went in immediately.
Yeah.
And so now that I know that, it's kind of like fevers are a big thing. And if your child is having unexplained fevers, or, you know, just sick to their stomach all the time with these, that was another symptom my son had, is he was constantly saying he felt nauseous and didn't want to eat and all that. And it was, the fevers were kind of making that happen. And so that is something I should have paid more attention to, and I should have kind of advocated more when it came to the fevers.
Well,
and in reality,
again, with a 10-year-old, I mean, you can't, and I'm sure you want to sit there and blame yourself, but I mean,
there's nothing we can do about it. Right. Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. But yeah, fevers are definitely a big thing to pay attention to. Your body doesn't have a fever for no reason. There is a reason behind a fever, and it's your body is fighting something off, or it's trying to fight something off. And that is a key indicator, in my opinion.
So what about those moments in your alone time, you know, after he's diagnosed, and you know, I mean, like I said, you want to blame yourself, but I mean, what was your coping mechanism? Was there something you fell on that, you know, maybe your faith,
yes,
maybe
it was
whatever,
definitely
you know?
my faith and my family. I have a very good support system. My mom and my dad, my brother, my grandparents, we are all very close, and they are all kind of ingrained in faith as well. And like I said, my son went to a private Catholic school, and the school and the priest, everyone there really rallied around us. They were there for us. Our local priest, she was there for us. It was just, we were very surrounded by help, and that's what we needed. And in the moment, I feel like you want to block those people out, because you get tired of having to explain what's going on, and, you know, do you need help? And that's my biggest thing. If someone has cancer, don't ask them if they need help, just do something for them, because you get so tired of being like, no, I'm fine. Oh no, it's just go do it. Don't, you know, question it, just go do it. And that's,
yeah. And you find out, I mean, there is a lot of empathy. You know, when you get diagnosed, everybody wants to figure out what they can do for you. And there is a certain sense of isolation. I can speak from being a patient. You know, you kind of want to be isolated. But you know, I've not been given that option, because I know so many people in this community, with everything I've done in this community. So, I mean, and that's why, you know, I came up with the podcast. Is, you know, everybody, what I found out was everybody has a cancer story, whether they've had cancer or, you know, a family member or a loved one has cancer. Everybody's been affected by it, which is sad.
right.
But you know, there's not enough opportunities to get this out there, and hopefully, you know, especially with you being here, you know, you can help somebody along that journey. You know, maybe you can, you know, your message is going to help them realize that, hey, maybe they need to take their child to the doctor to check on a fever. You know?
Yeah. And advocating for, you are your biggest advocate and you are your child's biggest advocate. You can't just go into the situation and say, oh, the doctors know what they're doing. Just, let them do it. You have to advocate for yourself and you have to advocate for your child.
Yeah.
You cannot just blindly, I love my son's doctors. They are amazing. But there were multiple times where I was like, no, I know my child.
Yeah.
And I know this isn't right. I know this part isn't normal. Like this, even if they have cancer, this part is not normal.
Yeah.
And you really do. I feel like you have to advocate for yourself and what you're willing to allow, because there were my son took over 11 different chemotherapy drugs. He had 1,000 something days of chemo pills. He had, like I said, I can't tell you how many injections. He had like 71 rounds or something. 30 spinal taps with chemo injected into his spinal fluid. And there were some that I said no to, that I was like, we're not going to do this one. He had this side effect from a blood clot. I don't want him to have that again. And the doctors are like, well, this is the way the plan is. He's supposed to. And, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, he's supposed to, but we're not doing that.
Well, and I think that's probably some of the best advice is letting people know, because you do want to put your faith in your oncologist. But that only goes so far.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to fight with them.
Absolutely.
And I'm definitely not afraid to fight with them. And we don't see eye to eye all the time, even though I have a huge respect for my oncologist, the whole team.
Oh, yeah.
But don't be afraid to fight with them. If it goes against something, they'll find another way.
Exactly. That's the thing. They will say, okay, well, if we can't do this, let's try this. And we're lucky because my son's oncologist, he was open to other alternatives. Or if I came to him and I was like, well, I've read this or I read that, he would sit down, talk me through it, talk about pros and cons or how it would interact with other medications. And he was very open to listening. And I'm lucky we had that. But you absolutely have to advocate for yourself. And yourself. And like I said, your kids and your own body and
And, my oncologist isn't as open to alternatives as I am. So I just don't tell her what I'm doing. She'll figure it out eventually. When she hears this podcast, she'll probably know, and I might have her on at some point. Like I said, I have a lot of respect for her. I do believe in, they're doing what they know to do. And it's a proven, it's a proven cycle. But it's not always a cut and paste kind of thing, and I think a lot of times they try to make it that.
Yes, every person is.
So you've got to be the advocate of making it your individual plan, and I may or may not. I've got another PET scan coming up quick, and if I go into inactive cancer, I don't know if I'll do chemo anymore. At some point, I know at some point I will pull the plug on chemo.
Yeah.
Because I feel like there is, there's a difference in quality of life and treatment.
Absolutely,
as my oncologist
I agree with that. Yep.
And I don't think there should be. If I'm choosing quality of life or treatment, I'm going to choose quality of life.
Yep, absolutely.
Because I don't mind going away. I don't want to die. But I'd rather die my way.
Right. And not miserable and thin and throwing up.
Yeah, I've already lost 100 pounds.
Not able to get up.
Which I will tell you, everybody goes, oh, you've lost a lot of weight. And I'm like, well, the cancer diet works.
Yes, it does. Yes.
I don't suggest it, but it works.
Yep. Yeah, my son was in the malnutritioned area for a majority of his treatment. He was just skin and bones the whole time. And that's another thing is like with pediatric cancers, I think the National Cancer Institute's budget for pediatric cancer is less than 4%. The American Cancer Society gives less than 1%. And I think 3 chemotherapy drugs have been produced for pediatric cancers in the last 40 years. And there's been hundreds for adult cancers. And that's kind of a discrepancy is that, pediatric cancer is not cute. You can't put it on TV and be like, oh, look at them, they're fighting. And nobody wants to see dying kids on TV. And, it's just one of those things where it's just so underfunded. And in my opinion, it's underfunded and under-researched because it's not sellable.
So in the knowledge of that, have you found any any foundation or anything out there that
Yes.
is really working toward
Yes,
finding
Cure Childhood Cancer, and it is actually based out of Atlanta. And Cure does millions of dollars. They get millions of dollars themselves to help with, I mean, they work with St. Jude and all these other places to really help with research. They are a research organization. So they really, I mean, they push research and trying to find new treatments. I mean, one of the main treatments my son received was produced in like the 50s for ovarian cancer or something like that. And it's just, like I said, he had 11 different chemos. That's crazy to think that, you know,
I was trying to think. So right now I'm on my second round of chemo. There was 4. I'm doing 3 now. And then I did some pills for a short amount of time. So I'm on like 7 or 8 different chemo drugs.
And it's crazy that it's that many to just maintain.
Yeah.
You know, to just be level. And I just feel like they could do a lot more research and, like I said, find alternatives or find other things that coincide with the chemo to help. And
mention the name of that one
Cure.
more time so we can get a link into.
Yeah, it's called Cure.
Just Cure.
Cure. Yep, Cure. And then it's childhood cancer underneath it, but Cure is the name of the organization.
All right. Yeah, because
And they do, like I said, they do a lot. And they host meals up at AFLAC. So when you're on the AFLAC cancer floor, you're kind of isolated to that floor. And so places like Cure and the Amanda Riley Foundation, they bring lunches and provide food for the families a couple days a week. They do lunch and dinner. So you don't have to leave. You don't have to go anywhere. They provide food. And it means a lot when you're up there because there's days when you can't leave.
Yeah. And you know, how's his father with it, you know?
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that he was malnutrition for a long time because you are. I mean, you know, look at me. I mean, I didn't look like I had cancer until this last 3 months, you know, and I do. I've lost my hair and, you know, I'm 160 something pounds where I used to be 270 plus, you know. But it's not that I didn't need to lose weight, but I didn't need to lose this much.
Right.
But where's he at now? Is he at a healthy weight?
So he is really skinny. He's really skinny, and he hasn't hit his growth spurt yet, which they said because of his age and when he had treatment was from 10 to 13 and a half. So he is just now really starting. I know his last bone density scan, his DEXA scan, was really bad. He has horrible, I think they said it was like that of a 75-year-old. And so he's having to just kind of, he doesn't have to do hormone therapy yet. They'll give him a few years to kind of get caught up.
They want him to hit that spurt first.
Before they feel like they need to do anything. So he's getting there. I mean, he still weighs like 120 pounds, but it's okay.
Poor guy. Yeah, I weigh less now than I did when I graduated high school.
Yeah. Yeah. That's how he is. I'm like, you've been 120 pounds for a long time now.
Well, he'll hit it. I mean, you know, he'll hit it and he'll get there.
Oh, yeah.
You know? Well, that's awesome. I mean, thank you for sharing that story. Is there anything else you want to kind of put in there, information or?
Not that I can think of. Just I got my good spiel about research.
Man, I tell you what, you nailed it. Yeah, I mean, you know, that Cure, I don't think that's one I knew about. And you know, part of what we do here, we have the Cancer Story podcast. I've got Leave Your Thumbprint that's helping people create legacies, and then I've kind of got an umbrella company that I call the BK Foundation. And our goal there is for every so much money we raise, we're going to give a certain percentage away to charities. And I'd rather it be to the ones that are working than the ones that are collecting all the money. And there's nothing wrong with the American Cancer Society or all those big ones. Right. But me as an alternative kind of guy, I'm looking for those alternatives that might need that little extra boost.
Yeah, that's definitely how I feel. I feel like the more nationalized ones are kind of...
They have a purpose.
Yes. And I just think that the smaller, like Cure and all these other ones, they genuinely are just trying to research and trying to help and, you know, make a difference in a lot of these kids' lives, because we know a lot of kids that died, and it's just they should have never... Yeah. You know, especially when we know that there are adult treatments that aren't FDA approved for children, but, you know, adult gets leukemia, they have 8 months, a year of treatment, and they're done. and we're in 3.5 years.
Right, and it's something that he's going to have some sort of something
Forever.
for the rest of his life. Yeah. Have they put a life expectancy on him?
They have not. I mean, I've kind of done my own research, and it just kind of depends. A lot of these kids end up relapsing with secondary cancers because of the chemo that they took.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a later in life thing.
And that's kind of my way of looking at it. Like I told you earlier, at some point I know I'm going to pull that chemo. I know I'm going to pull it because if I was, and I say this a lot, and you've probably heard it before, but if I was to die tomorrow, I feel like I would die from chemo and not cancer.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, I could definitely see that. There were days where I just questioned it, that I definitely questioned it. Like I said, with him getting that blood clot, that was solely because of chemo. It was a side effect of the chemo he had. I mean, all of the issues he had were side effects of the chemo once we got started.
And that's kind of where I'm at. I don't feel like I have cancer. I really don't feel like I have cancer. I have chemo.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, it's true. It is. It's true. It makes you sick, makes your head hurt, makes your bones hurt.
It's like every drug that I'm taking is to fight the side effects of the chemo.
Yep, it is.
Yeah. Well, listen, I want to thank you so much for coming here today.
Well, thank you.
What a
I
great
appreciate
story.
it.
I feel like you definitely given some insight, some helpful tidbits of knowledge there. If I think your story for your son, and maybe we need to get him in here.
Absolutely.
And do one. I can't get my daughter to come in, but maybe we can get your son to come in. But I want to thank you again for sharing such an amazing story. I mean, for him to get, leukemia at 10, and where he's at today, and how it's affected. It's literally probably gave him a purpose in life that he feels like he needs to be in some sort of medication, the medical field, because that's what he knows. That's what he grew up in.
Absolutely, right? It is. Yep.
And it's amazing how that works and how God's hand works.
Absolutely.
But I want to thank you again, and for the crowd out there, if you found value in today's message, please subscribe to a Cancer Story podcast. Also, check out our website, bkfoundation.com, where you can browse our merchandise and become a part of our community. And again, we want to thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Awesome. So I didn't ask in the interview, how does his siblings, how were they?
They're okay. So one of them was born I had a 6-month-old when he got diagnosed. And she still, even though she was little, there's some things towards the end of his treatment that she still remembers. And she's like, I remember him being sick and all this. And we really have to explain to them because they get concerned that they're going to get cancer too.
I was going to ask that.
And we have to kind of be like, well, no. And the cancer my son actually got mostly occurs in boys. It's not really, it does occur in girls, but typically it occurs in boys and children with Down syndrome. So it's kind of in that category. And I have to kind of explain to them, cancer is not like that. It just is, we explain it as a virus and, goes through town, and I get a cold and you get a cold, you get cancer. And it just kind of,
duck, goose.
It's like that. I'm like that. I'm like, that's just the way we explain it, is that's kind of what happened. And your brother was the one that got it.
And so I asked everybody to listen to the podcast.
There's a long line of reasons that we're both holding in, but there's no time to go down the list of could-have beens. We don't want to talk about it, we don't want to be alone, and the thought just us spoil right